Hey, welcome back to Miniature Game Montage. I am Jimmy. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to play Port Royal by Firelockgames. If you're new to Port Royal like I am, this should be a great place to start. I'm going to try to do everything right, but if I get anything wrong, be sure to leave a comment down below. I will pin a correction so everybody can be on the same page. Now these videos serve two big purposes. One, I'm not so much of a reader, and doing these videos really forces me to take a close look at the rulebook. And two, maybe it will help someone in the broader community. So stay tuned, we'll get into what makes Port Royal unique and special. Port Royal takes place in the city of Port Royal in the events of an earthquake that rocked Jamaica in 1692. The earthquake destroyed the city, and the game has us taking on a company of pirates, privateers, and more to reclaim what treasures they can. Port Royal is a skirmish game played on a 2x2. It is made by Firelockgames, who are known for the larger scale tabletop game Blood and Plunder. Let's cover the basics, and like any miniatures game, you'll need some miniatures, preferably 28mm and themed for fighting in this time period. Muskets, pistols, and swords were the main weapons of choice during this time. You can start playing with just as little as 4 miniatures per side. You'll also need some D10 dice of different colors, a ruler or tape measure, and some tokens to mark various effects. The game takes place on a 2x2 foot square space, and if you want to take your game to the next level, you'll also want some terrain like we see here. A great place to start for all of this is the Port Royal starter box that I picked up at Adepticon. I feel I should mention this video is not sponsored, and I haven't been given anything. Let's dive into the game turn, and each turn has an active player and a reactive player. The game has a more traditional structure where players will activate all of their models, and when finished, the other player can do the same. What makes Port Royal so unique is the reactions that can occur, but we'll cover that in just a minute. Each turn starts with the initiative phase, and during this phase, each player will generate 6 fortune points. You can keep track of these fortune points using coins, or just use a d6 to track them. But fortune points allow you to twist fate, and potentially get that lucky break you missed. You'll often see them in the form of taking additional actions, or rerolls. Any unused fortune points are lost at the end of the turn, and replenish back to 6 in the next game turn. As a note, it may be possible to get more than 6 fortune points depending on how disadvantaged your crew is against your opponent. The first time a player can use fortune is in the initiative phase. A player may spend up to 3 fortune to try to win the initiative. At the start of each turn, both players roll 3d10, and any die that is a 7 or greater is a success. Any fortune points used are automatically counted as successes. So if you used 3 fortune, you automatically have 3 successes. If you're using fortune in the initiative phase, it is kept secret and revealed with your opponent at the same time. In this example, the player on the left really wanted to win initiative this turn, so they used 2 fortune to try to impact their initiative roll. They do not get any successes of 7 or higher, but they do have 2 automatic successes from the fortune they used. The player on the right just rolled their 3d10, and they got 2 successes as well. In the event there is a tie, the turn goes to whoever used the most fortune. In this case, although the player on the left didn't roll any successes, their 2 fortune used has given them the initiative for the turn. Now if both players used the same amount of fortune and still tied, then just re-roll using the same modifiers. Now there is something interesting about Port Royal, and that is random events. In the event there is a tie when rolling for initiative, you will generate a random event. This only happens if you roll a tie in the opening initiative turn, and does not happen in subsequent turns. There is an events table to roll on, which can result from anything from a bad omen and losing fortune to rain, which applies a +1 to shooting penalty for reactions. And there's numerous other things that can happen as well. Now that we've determined the active player for the first turn, let's take a look at activating your characters. And each character is activated individually, and all actions must be taken with that character before you move to another. Each time a character is activated, they can make 2 actions by default. Each time you make an action, you will need to pause for your opponent to take any reactions. A reaction can occur each time the active player completes an action. For example, a move. In this example, the reactive player may attempt a single reaction. This reaction can be done by any character that has 2 fatigue or less. Now we'll discuss fatigue a little later on, but the character must also have line of sight to the model after its action is fully completed, so no interrupting in the middle. Speaking of line of sight, it should be noted that line of sight in Port Royal uses true line of sight. Look at the perspective of the model firing to the target and see if you can visually see the target. Keep in mind, enemy characters and terrain could potentially block line of sight. With line of sight established, the reactive player may attempt their reaction against the target. And to do this, you'll roll a standard test called an experience test for that character. To do this, roll a single d10 and try to beat your experience stat on the character card. If unsuccessful, the active player can continue as normal. If the test is successful, the reactive player may take 1 action, and if that is an attack, the target must be the character who is currently activated. A big note here is you can attempt multiple reactions by the same character throughout the turn. An activated character, however, can only trigger a reaction attempt once per activation. So as the reactive player, you can only react after the first or second action, not both. In the example we just seen, the officer did successfully pass his experience test, and now he can make any action he wants, which will probably be to shoot the poor sailor. And this is the basic flow of the game. You may also see free actions and reactions, and if a rule states that an action is free, it does not count against the active character in any way, they would still be able to make their 2 actions. Additionally, a following action can be repeated without penalty, which is normally not the case. A free reaction is similar, and the experience test required is automatically passed. Let's take a look at the actions you can do, and what happens when you take an action. First, a character can normally move up to 4 inches, and this is measured from their base. Remember, once your action is complete, a reaction may be declared by your opponent. If you decide to move again with your second action, you can do so, but move 1 inch less, and this continues to a minimum of 2. For example, if you decide to use a point of fortune to move for a 3rd time. So in total, if a character moved twice and used a point of fortune to move again, they can move a total of 9 inches. Characters may freely move over terrain up to 1 inch tall and hop gaps up to 1 inch wide. You may not move through other characters. The one exception is if a character is shaken, and they may be positioned 1 inch out of the way. We'll discuss what shaken is in just a minute. Characters can climb vertical surfaces if it has the movement to, but if multiple move actions are taken to climb, each consecutive movement action after the first requires a successful experience test at the end, or the character may fall. Characters can also jump gaps greater than 1 inch and no more than 4 inches. To do so, take an experience test, rolling 1d10 with a -1 modifier for each consecutive move action prior to the jump. Think of this as gaining speed. If the test fails, the target falls on the far side of the attempted jump. As a note, you can't jump more than 1 inch up, and a character moving more than 2 inches down is considered to have fallen when jumping across a gap. If a character falls from a height of 2 inches or more, a damage test is required. You'll get -1 for every full 2 inches fallen. Armor is ignored on falls, and if the character survives, they will be prone, which we'll discuss in a minute. With movement covered, let's look at attacks. Attacks come in 2 forms, shooting and fighting. To shoot, declare a target that is not engaged and within your line of sight and attack range, and that can be measured at any time. Choose your weapon, as you may have multiple options. The chosen weapon must have ammo to fire, and all weapons start the game loaded. At this time, any special rules need to be declared, and any modifiers that apply. The modifiers are being shown now, and for example, if the target is at short range, there is no penalty. At medium range, the attacker suffers a +1 penalty, and at long range, +2. Additionally, any intervening terrain would give cover unless the attacker is within 1 inch and shooting over it. If the target is in the open with no cover, they suffer a +2 penalty to their shooting save. With line of sight, ammo, and range verified, we now take what is called an opposed roll, where both players are going to roll 3d10, and the number of successes will be counted for each player. For the shooting player, the success target is determined by their shoot skill. That's the first value on the card. For the opponent, they are rolling on their shoot save, which is the second number on the card. Whoever has more successes determines if the target has been hit or if the shot fails. As a note, a critical hit on a 10 generates an extra success. You need to always roll a die of a different color, and only that die will generate a critical. Regardless of the outcome, add a reload marker to the fire to remind yourself the weapon is out of ammo. If the shot is successful, meaning you rolled more successes than your opponent, roll a damage test. Subtract the number of the target's successes from the attacker. The attacking player then rolls a number of damage tests equal to the difference and removes the target as a casualty if successful. Alternatively, the target will take fatigue and roll a fatigue test per failure. Fatigue represents wounds and/or physical and mental exhaustion. To take a fatigue test, you roll a d10 after being hit and compare that to your character's resolve. If the test is passed, you just get the 1 fatigue, but if the test is failed, you take an additional point of fatigue. At 1 point of fatigue, there is no effect, but as fatigue increases, the model will eventually be removed as a casualty. Fatigue can be removed by taking a rally action. For this, you can roll a d10 and compare it to your character's resolve. If the test is successful, remove 1 point of fatigue. Any additional rally actions taken after the first incur a +1 penalty. If you roll a critical 10 on this test, remove an additional point of fatigue. You will notice that on 3 fatigue, a character will be shaken. Shaken characters are effectively out of the fight until fatigue is lowered, typically by rally actions. A character may never voluntarily gain a fatigue if it would cause them to become shaken. Shaken characters have no threat zone, which is typically 1 inch. They can only rally, move, but not within 4 inches of an enemy, and go prone or stand when activated. They may not make reactions, even free ones. They suffer a +2 penalty to all tests and immediately drop any loot or plunder tokens they may carry. Now I do want to verbally touch on the damage test, and the damage test your target is always 10. At any time a character is successfully attacked or has the potential to be injured from falling, for example, a damage test is required. The damage test is a standard d10, and apply any modifiers for the damage value of some weapons, like you saw the pistol was -2. So if your initial target is 10, that -2 brings it down to an 8. Fatigue also plays into this. For example, a target has 2 fatigue, they are easier to hit, and the attacker gets a -2 bonus to their damage roll. So that target of 10 with a pistol at -2 and 2 fatigue quickly becomes a 6. Again, if the test is successful, they are removed as a casualty, otherwise they gain fatigue for each failed test. It should be noted that any shooting attack after the first, if applicable, takes place with a +1 penalty on the test. Next, let's talk about a charge, which will combine a move with a free fight action. Although it's 2 separate actions, it's treated as 1 action and may be done only once per activation. You can't do this if you're engaged, but basically, you're just moving into another model's threat zone, typically 1 inch. A charge cannot trigger a reaction, although the free fight action may trigger a reaction from your opponent as normal. If engaged with a target, you can fight. The engagement range is determined by the threat zone, which is typically 1 inch, but it can be larger. As with shooting, any additional fight actions occur a +1 penalty on the test. To make an action, do a similar test as shooting, rolling 3d10 and testing against your fight value. The target will do the same using their fight save. If the fight takes place across a terrain feature that provides cover, the attacker suffers a +1 penalty. Additionally, if the attacker has other characters in the threat range, they can get a -1 bonus to a maximum of 3. These characters must not be shaken or engaged with someone else. Now, we talked about charging not allowing a reaction, and there are other actions that do not allow for reactions, including conceal. When done, the character will mark their status, and for the rest of the character's activation, all other characters attempting to react to them get a +2 penalty to their experience test. If the character is not in cover when they go concealed, it's just a +1 penalty. When making a shooting attack against a concealed character, apply a +1 penalty to the test. If a character takes a conceal as part of a reaction, they will remain that way until their next activation. A character can lose the conceal status if an enemy gets within 4 inches, if it makes an attack of any kind, or takes an interact action. The interact action is a catch-all for anything that can be done on the battlefield or per the scenario. It could be searching something or picking a lock, for example. In addition, a character may reload a weapon as long as they are not prone, engaged, or shaken. A character may also elect to go prone or stand. A prone character adds a -2 bonus to their shoot save, but suffers a +2 penalty for their fight saves. Additionally, they would not be in line of sight if they are behind terrain that provides cover. While prone, a character can move up to 2 inches. They may also shoot, rally, conceal, and stand. A character that goes prone or stands is considered to have moved. Once both players have activated their companies, we move to the end phase. And throughout the game of Port Royal, you'll get strike points, which are a measure of a company's overall morale and willingness to fight. Too many strike points will result in a strike test. At the start of each end phase, you'll determine your strike points, gaining 1 point for each casualty. You'll also get a strike if a company has lost more than half of their starting characters, and strike points may be given for scenario objectives. For example, if your opponent controls an objective, you gain a strike point. During the end phase of turn 2 and later, if a company has 2 or more strike points and twice as many as their opponent, they need to take a strike test. This test is also triggered at the end phase of turn 4 if a company has more strike points than their opponent. To take a strike test, you'll need an officer on board and roll a d10 trying to beat his resolve stat. If no officer is on board due to a casualty or something else, you automatically fail. If the test is failed, your company breaks and flees the battlefield. If the test is passed, you have the option to continue to fight or voluntarily flee. Fleeing is often an option to give your opponent a win, but take what you have and live to fight another day. And that's the basics of Port Royal. It's a very detailed game that keeps both players engaged at all times with actions and reactions. You'll be watching every move your opponent makes to see what opportunities may present themselves. You'll never just sit back and let them take a turn while you scroll on your phone. In addition to the game comes a campaign system where you'll start with a small company and build your experience over time. Who lives to tell the tales, who dies is ultimately up to fate and your tactical decisions. There's also a solo game mode as well. I hope you found this guide helpful, as making it has really helped me out. If you have any comments or corrections, please leave them below, and I'll be sure to pin a comment with any corrections. I do want to give a shout out to Thieves Harbor. That has been a great resource for a lot of information. You can also check out the Facebook group. I will put links down in the description for all of those. Supporters Club, your names are on the screen now. That's by no means necessary. If you've watched the video this far, you've done more than enough to support the channel, so thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.